Before filming this news video, I had a lot of information as regards people being pushed and people being unhappy with storylines on WWE Raw. Of course, now that's put into context, and so we're going to have a lot of information right here about Paul Heyman being removed from the executive director position. Before we move on, please do click like on the video and let's get started. Firstly, I will say that while Paul Heyman was executive director, he was getting essentially two paychecks. One for the executive director role and another for his on-air role as the advocate of Brock Lesnar. There have been suggestions for a while that Paul Heyman is someone that they could have acting as advocate or manager for some other members of the roster. However, thus far, because of the distractions of the executive director role, that is not something that has come to fruition. That may be part of the thinking here and one of the reasons that it was mentioned that he would be focusing on his in-ring career. Even though Paul Heyman, as we know, very rarely wrestles. One thing that made it clear that the writing may have been on the wall was that Paul Heyman was pretty much not involved in the Edge and Orton storyline at all. It's been heavily scripted outside of him. The branding is something that he apparently wasn't happy with, and all in all, Edge and Orton have been working more with Vince McMahon directly and the production team rather than Paul Heyman. It's been suggested a number of times that the writing was on the wall for Paul Heyman by a number of different websites now. It's possible because so many different websites are saying the same thing, that this came from the same source. However, it does seem clear that a lot of people saw this one coming even if they didn't directly know about it. Since the XFL stopped trading, Vince McMahon has been a lot more present. This has created a lot of pressure, particularly on the executive directors, one of which of course is no longer in that role. An unfortunate side effect of this is that a lot of people who were pushed by Paul Heyman in his time in that role are likely to suffer now that the push is over. Ricochet is someone we've already seen have the rug pulled out from under him. Apollo Crews is apparently someone that Vince McMahon really isn't a fan of, and we could see this push end sooner rather than later. I doubt it will end immediately, but for a little while at least we should be keeping an eye on some talent that have been pushed by Heyman, because it was popular talk amongst the locker room and the production and the creative team that Heyman was pushing the wrong people, and there have been some jokes on the SmackDown side in that regard. The friendly rivalry between Heyman and Pritchard, I am told, was still very much in place, but it did get a little bit more heated once we got down to the creative and locker room levels. In addition to this, there was a lot of disappointment higher up that Paul Heyman was not able to do much with AJ Styles when AJ Styles was on Raw. AJ Styles of course was moved to Raw in April and Paul Heyman took over a couple of months after. In that time, AJ Styles rejoined the club with Gallows and Anderson, but really outside of the Undertaker feud, he spent a while in the US title scene and didn't really have that many great storylines to sink his teeth into. This is apparently one of the reasons why as early as January, as I've reported on this channel, AJ Styles was being spoken about as someone who should move to SmackDown. Vince McMahon was apparently very happy that The Undertaker wanted to work with AJ Styles because it at least gave AJ Styles something to do at WrestleMania. Paul Heyman was of course behind the push for Drew McIntyre, someone that he has pushed relentlessly backstage even though Vince McMahon really didn't push him that hard. At the same time, Vince McMahon really did want to see his declaration that Drew McIntyre was a future world champion come true, so he went with it then. That said, it is possible now that Vince McMahon will look to pivot the championship sooner rather than later. We've been told many times that there has been a lot of faith shown in Drew McIntyre, and that does come down to Shane McMahon as well, who has been advocating for Drew in the same way as Paul Heyman. There are also question marks both of Paul Heyman and Bruce Britchard for their use thus far of the brand versus brand invitational, which wasn't really set up as a rule properly, but we've only so far had one appearance from Baron Corbin on Raw and two appearances from Charlotte Flair on SmackDown. Apparently the two men struggled to just get their heads together and make things happen, and the idea that that would help boost the ratings on Raw simply hasn't come to fruition. A large part of this is because apparently the executive directors were not making things happen. There is also continued USA Network pressure to push the 24/7 championship. This is one of the prime reasons that it was taken away from Rob Gronkowski, in addition to the fact that Rob Gronkowski is someone they were trying to get out of the company. Now that R-Truth has the title, he has been appearing on TV pretty much constantly, but the roles that he has been taking up are frustrating to management, creative, and the USA Network. creative have been told you have to do better with this championship. Finally, it's also been suggested that Vince McMahon is unhappy with NXT. When I asked about this, I was told that Triple H and Shawn Michaels are the best yes men in the business. They agree with everything Vince says and then continue to do whatever the hell they want. As an aside now from something that's been very Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon focused, I want to go a little bit more in depth on what I said earlier about AJ Styles. There are rumours coming out of the WWE that Styles is starting to rethink his position, not just because Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson have moved on to different companies, or will be doing so once their non-compete clause has expired, but also because apparently backstage right now with everything going on, CM Punk is not the only person really getting on AJ Styles' case. Now, I'm not going to get political on this and install my own view. I will simply say that AJ Styles' views, and a lot of them, have been seriously questioned more now than ever by a lot of people backstage, including in the locker room he is actively a part of. There has apparently been a lot of situations where AJ Styles has been mocked, and he is said to not be feeling particularly at home. This was also apparently one of the reasons that they were so keen to get him across to SmackDown, where he has always felt apparently more at home. That's all the news I had for people today. I want to thank everyone for watching, everyone who gives it a like or a share. My record is still 27. I'm hoping to break it one of these days. It is a little bit frustrating when I get 4,000 views on a video but only 4 or 5 likes, I will have to say. However, I want to thank everyone who watches, everyone who clicks like, everyone who has subscribed recently. Thank you for joining me on this journey. This has been your Wrestling News. I've been Tom Collihew, and thank you for watching.